Wake up.
Um, and we're ready for
CPI report. Child Protection in Iowa is brought to you by Vocal Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Again, it's repeated on Wednesday evening at 9:30 on Media Cable Channel 15 in Des Moines. You can email us at vocaliowa at mchsi.com. If there's parents out there that would like to get some advice on what they need to do in their situation where they have lost their children with DHS, well, hopefully we can be of some help. We have many years of experience. My, my number is 515-276-3956, and John's number is 515-282-2672.
Area code
Mine
515, right?
515 is the area code. Considering we're talking in two states now, this TV program is expanding. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls, running the controls, is
John Harvey, and welcome to the CPI report. That is uh, CPI stands for Child Protection in Iowa.
I think
And
someone's trying to call us already.
is that Omaha calling? Yeah, that's the Omaha line.
Omaha Council Bluffs
Okay.
area, huh?
Okay. We don't get too much into Nebraska law, but much of the law dealing with child protection is the same on this side of the uh, big river as on the other side of the big river. So, and a lot of the problems that seem to be arising come from both sides of the river. So, we're going to be talking about some of those kinds of issues. In addition, we have had on board for quite some time some legal talent, and an individual by the name of Terrance Walker, who's been looking into some of the uh, barriers that we have that are established when the bureaucrats set up to protect children. One of the big problems with this CPI report, uh, what we have seen on the CPI report, is that the cause of protecting children is a noble cause. There's no one that is out to destroy or to offend or to hurt children. Uh, but sometimes we go overboard and establish situations which are offensive to the families. And one of those cases is a case where parents have had a unruly child. They may have even adopted a child who was unruly from the uh, the system, and have put in years of toil to help correct the child. And then when the child gets totally unmanageable, then DHS wants to take over because they know how to take care of children through pharmaceuticals. They can make just an unruly child into a zombie. And for some reason, zombies are a little easier to corral. It's really a shame to terminate the rights and to sit on people who have been doing a marvelous job with children, a patient job with children, but yet when the time comes for some really tough assistance, when it would be easy for the department to step in and say, look, we're here to help. What services can we lend you that would be the best? You're the boss. We're good at certain things bureaucratically. But you're the boss. You show us what you think would help you. And whether it's Nanny 1-1 type treatment or just whatever it is. But what they want to do is they want to have a whipping boy, and as long as they can blame everything onto a parent and find reasons to file child abuse charges, then they can step into about every situation. I found one farmer who took out time from his efforts to go to school. I think they have about 30 hours of training to be a foster parent, and he said he'd like to have one child. Well, the DHS thought that was great, and he finished his training, and they gave him 3 children. And the shame of it was this. The mother of the children could come and visit. And she came one day and found that there was a red mark across the buttocks of the 5-year-old girl. This farmer was bright enough that he had shown 13 different ways that that child could have gotten a red mark across her seat. Well, they determined that the child had been beaten. Well, the child did take a swat a couple of days ago, or before that, with a soda straw, a long soda straw that they used to tie balloons on at the state fair. And so the terrible beating that the child got was from a soda straw. Well, what the DHS decided to do, since they needed the power and authority, they simply removed all 3 children from that home. Now, here's a loving, caring home. And this was even back before the days when they restricted spanking for foster kids. Now you cannot spank a foster child. So if you really want to be protected in this world, become a foster child, and you'll never get spanked. So those are some of the kinds of silly things that are being done. And of course, every time they move a child, that costs money. And they have to give them another clothing allowance. All kinds of wasted money in order to maintain agency control of a family. And who knows more about the child or the foster children than those who are taking care of the children? Don?
I'm going to come to the defense of that natural mother that you said came for a visit. She was allowed to have a visit, you said. And because of her concern as a mother for her child being beaten, uh, she turned in that report, and you said it sounds like it made a whole lot of problems for the farmer. Of course, I don't have any idea what kind of a lifestyle was going on in the natural home, but I can just imagine most parents, if any parent has a desire to visit their children, which most of them probably do, she would have a major concern about the pain and emotional suffering that the child was going on. So I thought I'd throw that angle in, John.
Well, this whole idea of spanking is something that uh, is adhered to by about 10% of the American population. 100%, or I'm sorry, 90% of the American population have spanked their children. So it's nothing completely unheard of to spank a child.
It's okay to spank your own child. It's not okay when somebody else spanks another child. Don't you hear the child crying? So that's, if a DHS worker spanks their own child, if they have a child, that'd be all right. But when they see somebody else beating a child, well, that's wrong. I mean, in their eyes.
That's right. Well, and here was the argument against this business of disallowing spanking at the time. The argument was, I have 2 children, I have 2 foster children. All 4 of them went down to the Zippy Mart and picked up a few more items than they bothered to pay for. Now, my children are going to get spanked. Is it fair for them to be spanked when they know that the people that live in the same house under the same authority will not get spanked? Well, who cares about equity in these matters? Well, that's one of my peeves. Another one is a scenario in which we determine that a person is drug affected. They call them drug addicted, drug affected. One of the big problems in going after the drugs. Now, that doesn't mean that this organization or this agency, this vocal, believes that street drugs are good under any circumstances whatsoever. But when you construct public policy and you have social worker police around, you must operate within a certain framework of rules. And the one big rule is that if there is the presence of drugs, you must show somehow that the presence of drugs is a problem for the child. In some cases, that wouldn't be very difficult to do. If somebody was coke addicted and spent all of her time sleeping on the Davenport, and that wouldn't have to be a her, but if an individual was known to be a coke user, and the children ran into the street, and one of them was hit by a pickup truck, because the cause of death could be linked to the use of drugs. But seldom ever do they have that kind of evidence to show. Now, once they have removed the children, here comes another problem. The law is written in such a way, and I don't know how equity can put up with this sort of stuff. If they remove any children from the home and turn them out into foster care and then have them adopted out, mother can turn around and have another child. And the question I get is, can they come and get my child? Unfortunately, the answer is yes, they can. Even if the new baby is not born with any kind of a drug problem, even if the mother is not using, even if the father is not using, they have the right to grab the baby from any family for which there has been a removal. Now that is very bad law, and that goes on in here in Iowa. One of the things that is in the state legislature right now is which held up the state legislature from coming to any kind of conclusions is they couldn't find enough money to pay for all of the sexual abuse laws they were trying to pass. It was only costing $10 million a year to enhance these sexual abuse laws, and they can't find the $10 million. Isn't that a shame? Perhaps they ought to think about it a little and say, is it really all that necessary that we look into all of these silly laws, doubling the penalties, putting boundaries around schools, which means somebody has to enforce that, because every time you pass a law, you have to find some way of enforcing it. Enforcement means you're going to drive up the cost of the courts because you're driving up the dockets. Well, I've been talking too much here, and we need to slip over very quickly and see if there's some great wisdom percolating in the office of our counsel. Okay.
And what is his name?
Terrance Walker.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know if what I can determine to be is wisdom is coming about. I could say a bunch of ignorance, if that's what you want to say. And I'll start it off with our case here in Iowa here that happened on April 28th, 2005. Just wanted to share this with everyone again who didn't catch it last week. This is an opinion from the Iowa Court of Appeals. It was issued on April 28th again in the case of Isidro Ramirez, April 28th, 2005. And if you could just go to the second page of that, actually it would be the final page of the opinion. The Chief Judge for the Court of Appeals, Judge Sackett, I just find this comment. I think we're going to be quoting this every week for some time. This is just indicative of what's going on in the courts. And Judge Sackett is the only one with any guts enough to point it out. Everybody else is just business as usual, business as usual. Well, you can't have business as usual when you have what's going on here. And I'll just paraphrase what she's saying there. She's talking about what happened. This guy was convicted of murder, and he was going for his final appeal in the state, which is the post-conviction relief procedure. But what they denied him the opportunity to reverse his original conviction and have a new trial, and they did it basically very succinctly, but they did it. The judge did it in the initial case before it went to the Court of Appeals. Did it on the prosecutor's ruling. The prosecutor typed the ruling. The judge didn't. The judge just basically went and signed everything. But what she basically says here in the last sentence is what is even more so troublesome is that the ruling prepared by the prosecutor contained factual and legal errors. So the judge signed off on this thing that was with factual and legal errors. Well, where is the justice in that situation? There is none. If you're going to have the prosecutor prepare everything, what the heck is the judge there for? Is he there just to rubber stamp everything? It seems to me this is basically becoming more and more the case. And if it's not the prosecutor, it's prepared by whoever is closest to the judge. And you have a party's lawyer that prepares the rulings, and the judge just signs off of it. What does he care? It makes his job easier. And who's going to supervise the judge? We have in Iowa here. We have the Judicial Qualifications Commission. How many judges have they ousted? You can count on your hand over the past 30 years how many judges they've ever ousted. So when you talk about accountability, there is none. So that's why you see this type of thing going on, and that's why it's troublesome. It is troublesome, and it's too bad that the lone dissenting voice in this opinion is the one that's pointing out these ethical dilemmas, because it should be, if in fact there is justice and there was some wisdom in the courthouse, then we would have all of the judges on her side. There's only one lone voice. That just gives you a sign of what's going on in the courthouse today. One other big story here, nationwide story. Of course, I'm sure you guys are all familiar, if you've been keeping track of the news lately, that Tom DeLay, House Majority Leader, has been very critical of the judiciary, and in my opinion, rightfully so. He's quoted on Newsmax.com, May 14th article, quoting the Men in Black book, Men in Black, how the Supreme Court is destroying America. Now, what he's also quoted as saying, or not only is he quoted as saying that, but he drew wide criticism from pundits last month after he vowed that federal judges who sanctioned the starvation death of Terry Schiavo would be held accountable. But House Judiciary Committee Chairman James Stensbrenner, who is spearheading the GOP push for judicial reform, told the Post that any new measures would not be aimed at retribution. There are some judges that have deliberately decided to be in the face of the president and the Congress, and when they are criticized for that, they hide behind the issue of judicial independence. There's a buzzword we hear a lot. We should be independent. We've even seen it in articles here in the Des Moines Register. Well, this article goes on to state that none of the three branches of government should be given a blank check without oversight on their operations. That's what we have here, folks. When you have a prosecutor making errors, legal and factual errors, that's the only thing that you can really go by when you present a case. You have the facts, you have the law. Well, both of them are wrong, then there is no justice. The justice system is broken. And when you don't have a system of accountability that's working, that's only removed a handful of judges the past 30-something years, then we can't really say that it's doing its job, especially since they operate in complete secrecy, and they only operate under the public eye if, in fact, a judge is removed. That's not, to me, a true system of accountability. But yet and still, that's what we have here. One other story I wanted to point out from the Michigan News, michnews.com. Very good article by a fellow by the name of Andrew Pollock III, May 16, 2005. He was talking about, and I'll paraphrase this here since we're short on time. He's talking about how us as Americans have recently become inundated with articles and commentaries from news sources talking about the three co-equal branches of government. And he points out that this is a fallacy. And he points specifically to the Constitution, which I have to commend him on because most journalists don't have the wherewithal or the guts to actually point out such things that should be obvious. Uh, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 of the Constitution that gives the Congress has the power, with the cooperation of the President, to regulate the jurisdictions of the district and appellate courts. Since no federal courts, with the exception of the U.S. Supreme Court, have constitutionally defined jurisdictions, Congress has complete discretion to mandate the jurisdictions exercised by district and appellate courts. That he points that out. And then they also says that Congress can also regulate appellate jurisdictions of the U.S. Supreme Court, and Congress can exercise constitutional authority to prevent the Supreme Court from hearing arguments and making rulings on cases that most members of the public don't want the courts to adjudicate, such as those involving same-sex marriage or the displays of religious monument. Article 3, Section 2. He also points out that Congress can also determine whether or not federal courts should have the authority to issue writs. And interestingly, courts have no constitutional authority to issue writs. The framers left this issue entirely up to the discretion of Congress. You had something to say on that,
When you
Don?
mentioned writ, that's common law name for writ of habeas corpus, writ of
All writs and stuff like
different
that.
kinds of writs. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I should point that out.
It's like petitions going into the court system. It's just another word that was used in the common law system that we still have a right to use today.
Yeah, one of those old-fashioned ones, I guess, huh?
Yeah, but I think they're great. I think there's more benefit out of those than some of them we have today.
Now, there's two other things that he was pointing out that Congress does have the authority to do. They have the authority to require that rulings based on the U.S. Supreme Court or issued by the Supreme Court on constitutional cases be based on unanimous decisions instead of majority decisions. There's no procedure defined in the Constitution for making these types of rulings. And then he also points out that Congress can require that courts apply the Constitution using a commentary supplied by Congress instead of a commentary of the court's own making. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, he again refers to. Now, and he sums this up, and I do think that this is the best point that he could have made in this article. Accordingly, the three different branches of government are not co-equal and were never intended to be so. And what does this all mean with respect to judicial activism? He poses a question. The U.S. Congress has all the constitutional authority it needs to rein in activist judges. The main question we should be asking is whether or not there is a sufficient desire by Congress and the President to achieve this objective. And I would have to say that obviously there's not, because we could have ended this problem a long time ago with judges signing off on prosecutors' rulings and prosecutors' prepared rulings. The judge is supposed to do that. You know, why isn't that we have judges doing these kind of things in this nation? It's because we don't have a system of accountability, and for two, we don't have public officials whom desire to change things back to the way they should be, whereas Congress makes the rules and the judges are bound by those instead of just making up their own factual and legal errors and rubber stamping those. It doesn't make any sense. But that's what goes on here in Iowa and across the nation. One other example I can point to, just a case involving me. About 3 months ago, I took a case into the Iowa Supreme Court expecting well, I guess I should be saying I wasn't expecting anything differently than what happened. You basically, if you're not disposed of great wealth or great connections with the judiciary, you shouldn't be expecting anything great to happen if you go into the courthouse or the courtrooms or appeal in front of an appellate court. But what had happened is they had ignored the issue that I had raised, the winning issue. Now, when you can do that and get away with it, and there's no person or persons or agency or governmental body to complain to, then we don't have true justice here in the United States. What we have here is a system of unaccountability that the judges like to always point to is judicial independence, and they don't do anything about it, and they expect everybody to allow them to continue their business as usual, which is why our organization here, VJO, which is spearheaded by myself, Vote Iowa Judges Out, is advocating that we start voting these cowards out, and that's exactly what they are. When they hide behind a black robe and take an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution, and yet and still they do things like sign off on orders prepared by parties that contain factual errors and legal errors, or even worse, ignore issues that may be able to grant a certain party relief, then those three things, I mean, point to the fact that we don't have anything. But when we have those type of things in effect, then we don't have a true system of justice here in America. And I think that we need to implement a new form of judicial review. One, not only should we have the accountability forces put into place, just as suggested by Congressman Sinsberner, but we also should also have a third independent agency go in there, not only determine the facts in certain cases, but also the issues raised in certain cases, and that way we can eliminate the judge's sole control over which issues should be heard and which should not be heard, and how they determine those things. And then another thing they should do is also make sure that they publish all those opinions. When we have one system, or we have one set of judicial rulings that is published and ones that's not, what does that say? That says that a judge is not convinced of the propriety of the opinion, and some of them they are. Maybe they're not doing their job all the way if they can't put their rubber stamp of approval on all the opinions that they're issuing. Apparently there's something wrong, and that's what we need to really address here, and that's why we should vote a lot of these cowards out of office, because they're not doing their job. That's just my opinion anyway.
Okay. There was once a gentleman here in Des Moines, Iowa, who found himself in the General Assembly many, many times. He was well known in the General Assembly, and he was able to get in and to talk to individuals, and even get a piece of legislation passed on behalf of some mothers who were having difficulty with the Polk County Court on drug charges, and saying they were using standards which were even greater than the standards used by the U.S. government at SAC Air Command. Now, this gentleman's name was John Hartog. John Hartog is a real patriot. He is a imported patriot. He was born in Holland, and I think they migrated because of the distress in Holland to Indonesia, and because of the distress in Indonesia, he moved to Council Bluffs. Migrated to Des Moines for a few years, where he brought some good patriotic thinking to Des Moines and to Iowa in developing something called FIJA, Fully Informed Jury Association. Now, that has not gone over real big because the lawyers don't like fully informed jurors.
Nor do the judges, should I add.
That's right. The judges want to control what the jury knows about the law. I've even put my hand on a law book. It's called the Rules of Court. And I was told by the judge that I could not do that because the jurors didn't need to know there were rules other than his rules. Well, you see, that dates back to the middle centuries, and I think it was about time that we had someone like John Hartog to help straighten things out. Well, since decades have taken their toll on John, but he's not going to quit. He's going to push forward on a number of issues, and the issues that he's looking into are some of the improper imprisonment, and Council Bluffs is the headquarters, apparently, of improper imprisonment. One gentleman was imprisoned in Council Bluffs illegally, spent 25 years, Terry Harrington, and it took something like 9 or 10 years for the Iowa Supreme Court to come to the realization that this man was improperly imprisoned. And
it's sad to see that they didn't really respond until a lady by the name of Ann Danaher spent over $50,000 trying to free him, and then until all the papers had published something about the story of Terry Harrington. It shouldn't take that type of media firestorm to generate the enough controversy to act. You know, they're disposed, obviously, of enough intellect to ignore facts and change the laws. So, I mean, they should be disposed of enough intellect to see that justice wasn't served in this case. Well, I think that the problem that they're having is they lack the conscience and the heart to actually do anything about it. They're wanting to continue this business as usual approach to justice instead of trying to discern what is truth and what is fair. You know, when you don't have enough the right judges in there, then obviously they can't do that. And obviously, if they're rubber stamping appeals that have been sent up to them that were basically rubber stamped by the original trial judge, then obviously there's something wrong in the whole entire system here in the state of Iowa.
that's right.
And only one judge can speak up to it, and it's a horrible state of affairs. But that's what we have to face here in Iowa, and that's why we've got to get rid of these judges.
I'm guessing that Sackett is the only one that has the nerve to do it. The other judges are afraid. Some of them are afraid. Some of them probably have their own agenda to take this country in a different direction.
When you have a lot of them that have been former prosecutors, they have a prosecutorial mindset too. So, I mean, I think that's part of it. But, you know, when you're sitting there and you're getting paid $100,000 a year and, you know, that's all that you care about, then, you know, you have a system that basically rewards those type of people that are just in those kind of seats and just business as usual attitude.
Right.
Then, you know, what do you expect? I mean, we've got one other judge I can say that I've actually personally witnessed in action that is on the high court here in Iowa that I can actually kind of feel a sense that he's trying to do the right thing, is that's Justice David Wiggins. The rest of them, I think they're most all of them black robe despots.
Right.
Despots meaning tyrants, because they have no form of accountability, except for they do have the ability to be voted out, which we should be exercising here every year as they come up for retention vote.
Okay. I want to move real quickly here to something rather interesting. And I want you to take note of how well behaved these children are in a children's choir. You know, when they have that Christmas program, how chaotic sometimes things are when they move or transition from one activity to another, and kids are pushing each other and so on and so forth. Well-behaved children who have good parenting and who learn well how to watch over things, or learn how to watch their behavior, can do a real good job. Would you like to hear and watch a few little angels? I saw these at a Child Evangelism Fellowship banquet. I had attempted to get the name of the music director, but was not able to accomplish that. Maybe we can run this tape once again. But here are the Joy Singers singing at Grace Church, 2500 East Aurora, at the Child Evangelism Fellowship banquet. I'd like for you to take a watch and listen to their music and observe the discipline that they seem to engage in. We'll see if we can get things started here.
Thanks, John. That was pretty wonderful there. There's some children from your church.
Not my church.
Not your church.
No,
Okay.
just a banquet I attended.
Just a banquet. You okay? That's good. Hey, everybody out there, just to let you know, this is the book I was telling you about. If you can kind of ignore, I'm not a conservative. I don't consider myself liberal. I don't consider myself either one, Republican or Democrat. If you can avoid or ignore the conservative Republican slant in this book, and kind of get through and see some of the real issues that they're talking about in this book, this is a good book to get. Also, another one which we don't have right now, a copy of, which I'm going to get soon here. It's you might want to put that up a little bit higher there so you can see my face. Another one that I've heard is really good that I'm going to get here pretty soon is by Mary Webster. It's a modern day interpretation of the Federalist Papers. Really good to have, especially in this day and age where we don't have a real thorough understanding, obviously, not even in the judiciary, of the Constitution. When you have a woman's life basically ended a couple months ago, Terry Schiavo, on the basis that it violates separation of power for Congress to come in there and write a bill to save her life, and to say that that's a violation of the separation of power when courts do not have any power to sidetrack a law made by Congress other than the fact that it's unconstitutional, and they dream up this notion that their judge-made standards are created by the Constitution when there's nothing in black and white affirming that, then, we do have a lack of understanding of the Constitution. Federalist Papers, Modern Day Interpretation, Mary Webster. Again, vote aye will judge us out. We're going to be doing that here in about 6 months again, so keep that in mind. And if you have any questions or any judges that you want to report, give us a call. We'll do something about it.
Okay, thank you for tuning in to the CPI report. Here's a couple of numbers that you may like to consult with if you have difficulties with the Department of Human Services. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for coming